Hello, guys.
Hi, guys.
Dev and Mike here. Guess which one's which? If you've never seen us do one of these videos before, congratulations, you are lucky. So now,
Why does that make them
sense.
lucky?
That came out wrong. Let's try that again.
All right.
If you've never seen us do a video like this before, well, you're in for a treat. And there's a couple others too, so you can go back and find those as well. We're doing the best of 1972. What does that mean? Well, the format we've been following for these kind of videos is I do some research, which I've already done, to come up with what I think are the 10 biggest albums of all time from 1972. And I mostly base it on objective. I try to be objective. It's not really my personal opinion. So I look at other lists. I look at album sales, that kind of stuff. So then we'll listen to some samples from the top 10s, and then at the end, we will rank them.
And you guys feel free to put your rankings as well, because that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like our lists are usually different in some kind of way.
Right. Don't fault me personally if you don't like the list, because I tried to be objective. We've already done 1970, we've already done 1971, and now we're doing 1972. Most of these albums I've heard before, but some of them I haven't, so I'll also be listening to some of this for the first time. Now, we're not going to be playing the whole songs here during this video because it would make the video way too long. Okay, so before I list the top 10, let me mention some honorable mentions that came out the same year. First one I want to mention is Paul Simon, self-titled album.
Who?
This was,
of course it was.
Now, he's obviously from Simon and Garfunkel. Well, this was his first solo album, at least in the US it was. This has me and Julio Down in the Schoolyard. Do you know that song?
Maybe.
Down by the Schoolyard, sorry. Next one, Eat a Peach by the Allman Brothers. So the Allman Brothers, Ramblin' Man, that's the Allman Brothers, but not, this album doesn't have Ramblin' Man. And it's a mix, it's actually a double album, and it's a mix. It's got some studio tracks on it, but it's actually the majority of it is a live album. The next album, I have never even heard of this album, but when I did my research, it kept appearing on people's lists, and it was one of those sleeper things that didn't really sell well, but over time, people just keep mentioning it as influential. It's called Number One Record by Big Star. And I never heard of that album, and I've never heard of Big Star, so
it's before my time. By the title.
But it was critically acclaimed when it came out. But they didn't promote it enough, or they didn't make enough of it, so the poor distribution basically meant it didn't sell much. So that's why a lot of people may not know it.
That really bites.
But a lot of people have said it's an influence, and I guess it's particularly known for its songwriting and harmonies. Next up, once again, we have Elton John. Didn't make the top 10, though. Honky Chateau. That's the album that has Rocket Man on it.
That's a great title.
Yeah. Honky Cat as well.
And why is he not in the top 10?
It's not my opinion.
Fine.
But these are still great albums. That's why they're being mentioned still. Honorable mention. They still require us to honor them. Eagles, which is obviously huge debut album for the Eagles. That was their first album that has Take It Easy on it, which is a big song of theirs. Next up, Roxy Music, which was the debut album for Roxy Music.
Don't know.
Do you know Roxy Music at all?
Not
Brian
at all.
Ferry? But back then, Brian Eno was also in the band.
I do know him. That guy's in everything.
He plays with, he worked
TV.
with David Bowie, he worked with Talking Heads, he's got his own solo.
The movies now. He's all into soundtracks, I thought.
Yeah, he does a lot of stuff. He's all
stuff.
over the place. This one almost made the top 10. Superfly by Curtis Mayfield. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Well, it's the critically acclaimed soundtrack.
That's where I'm remembering from as that movie.
Yes, Superfly
there was a movie that came out.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And it was very successful. I don't know if the movie was successful. I have no idea. But the soundtrack was successful. Next up, Genesis. Most people in the US wouldn't have known Genesis much. But they were starting to get big in the UK back then with Foxtrot, which was their album that they came out with in 1972. I don't really know Genesis much before Phil Collins was the lead singer. This is Peter Gabriel Genesis. Yeah. Volume 4 by Black Sabbath, which we haven't listened to yet, but we will. We've already listened to Black Sabbath's first 3 albums. This was their fourth, obviously.
I long for the Black Sabbath. I long for
Yep. And this was another successful album of theirs. They had a good run of albums. The critics wrote them off still, but they were selling. It sold well, so fans don't care what the critics say. And then this last one is another one, sort of like Big Star. It's a German band called Can, and the name of the album is Ege Bamyasi. I don't know. I think it's Turkish, that whatever that phrase means. And this was a critically acclaimed album that was influential over time as well. I bet you most people nowadays have never heard of it. I never heard of it at all. I know you never heard of it. So that's our honorable mentions. Now we move on to the top 10. I'm just going to start going through these in the order that they were released. First up is Harvest by Neil Young. I know you like Neil Young.
I do.
Even though she hasn't heard much Neil Young. Not
really.
But we have started listening to a little bit of him on other videos like this. This was his 4th album, I think. It came out on February 1st. Most people think this is his greatest album, I think. And I wouldn't argue with that. It's definitely up there. I think you'll probably know a couple of these songs.
I hope so. Great song. I wanna live. Just listen to this album. Just listen to this album. We'll lay on the floor together. Hold hands.
And you'll probably know this one as well. I love this song.
Old man, look at my life.
Banjo.
Old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you.
You're pretty.
So you knew that
Man,
song?
I'm a fan of him. What?
You knew that song as well, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are like 2 of his biggest songs, so obviously they belong on his biggest album. Did you take your little notes? Okay, moving on. This is called Pink Moon, and it's by Nick Drake. I am not familiar with the album nor the artist. This came out on February 25th. We'll listen to the first 2 songs on the album. First one being the title track.
I saw it written and I saw it say, Pink Moon is on its way.
I've heard this.
Oh, yeah? I don't know why, but I'm getting a Cat Stevens vibe.
I like that.
Yeah, it's nice to discover something new that I never heard of that's supposedly a classic. The next song is called Place to Be.
When I was younger than before.
Very interesting voice.
And now I'm older, gotta get up, clean the place.
He doesn't remind me of it, but I think of him in the same vein I think of like Joni Mitchell, right? He can write songs and sing and play the guitar.
Strum that guitar.
Yeah, and the songs are not complex from a production standpoint, but they're just, well-written songs.
They're
well
raw
sung.
and emotional.
Yep. Next up, your friend and mine, Jethro Tull. This was their 5th studio album, came out on March 3rd, Thick as a Brick. This album I'm familiar with because when I was a kid, I liked it a lot. It's definitely progressive because it's one big long song. Now, of course, when you listen to it, there's all sorts of different tracks that sound like separate songs, but they all meld together in one big long progressive masterpiece. And the album claimed that it was basically a poem written by some kid that won a poetry contest, but it's not.
Love that.
It's actually written by Ian Anderson, okay? But the album says it's written by this kid. I forget what the kid's name is.
That's a great thing.
There's even a
Maybe it was influenced by the poem.
Right, and the cover is a newspaper article of talking about this kid winning this contest.
So they had to play into
So
the
it's
story.
all over the album. We'll listen to the beginning of it, and he'll sing that part, so maybe you'll get some feel for that.
Okay.
Really don't mind if you sit this one out.
She loves the flute part. It always cracks her up.
Every time.
I like how they interplay like more minstrelly instruments
Apparently.
with rock stuff.
But your new shoes are worn at the heels to be thick as a brick.
Very British.
Good for them.
Yep. Next, I am not familiar with this album, but I certainly know like 2 or 3 songs off of it, that's for sure. Deep Purple's Machine Head came out March 30th. I think this was their 6th album. This has some of their biggest songs on it. Let's hear some of it. This is the opening. It's a great opener. All right, you will absolutely know this next song, okay? I'm sure of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They play the song whenever you, like, need to be a badass, walking into a bar, and you're gonna crack a pool cue over somebody's head.
Yeah, it's such an iconic riff. The bass is just nasty. This next album came out on May 12th. It is considered by many the Rolling Stones' finest work.
Oh.
It's a double album, Exile on Main Street. It's not an album full of their biggest hits either, which is kind of interesting, but people just thought it was very
from
raw.
beginning to end kind of thing.
It's just raw feeling to it. They didn't spend a lot of time producing it or anything.
Nice.
It just feels like, you know.
Yeah. Backup singers. That's just a feel-good song. I can see why that would be like one of their highest rated songs.
This is probably their most successful song with Keith Richards as the lead vocalist. What do you think of Keith Richards' voice? Not the best voice in the world, but it's definitely different. You can see why he didn't sing, you know, many of the songs.
I'm not going to be that judgmental.
Okay.
I think that was a very good voice for that song.
It's a great song. I love that song. That was a big hit as well. I just told you it wasn't like an overproduced album or anything, but those were probably the 2 most polished songs off the album. Now we move on to an album we've actually just listened to, honey. Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie. Yeah, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, to be exact.
No.
And if you haven't seen it, check out our reaction to it. This came out on June 16th. Here's a few quick clips from that reaction to that album.
I'm an alligator.
Great transition.
I'm a mama, papa coming for you. Just walking like a big monkey bird.
It's a pink monkey bird.
I love the supporting piano chords there.
Freak out in a moon daydream, oh yeah.
Okay, take over, Mr. Ronson.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low. I'm
singing,
leaning
man.
back.
There's a starman waiting in the sky that all the children look at.
Like the way he says boogie. Boogie.
I love the sound of the guitar, the riff.
Well hung in snow white time.
That's great.
Making love with his ego.
That's a great line.
Hey man, oh, leave me alone. This mellow black chick just put my spine out of place. Hey man,
Ride him, cowgirl.
back from Suffragette City.
The piano is very Little Richard. Cool. That's a cool false ending there. Of course, that's a classic album. It's on my top 25 greatest albums of all time, which is another video you could watch if you haven't seen it yet. This next one, I remember this being an album I really liked as a kid. I haven't heard it in ages. We should listen to it at some point. This is Close to the Edge by Yes. Came out on September 8th. It was their 5th album. I think that many people consider this their greatest album. Let's listen to some of it.
Yep. Anytime there's a babbling brook, you have my vote. I'm already there. They know females. Or anybody who likes
Water
nature.
and bird sounds. Can't go wrong.
Yeah. Nature is unfolding. I dig that.
Wait for it.
Oh, it makes me tingle. He's close to the edge. They are close to the edge of being too weird, but not.
The bass sound is pretty interesting.
Yes! I wonder if that's where their group band comes from. A whole bunch of people are just like, yes!
All sorts of
Lots
jumping
of feelings.
around. Yeah. But it doesn't feel like one song. It feels like 5 songs. They, of course, are all amazing musicians in that band. And singing. And now we have the debut album for Steely Dan called Can't Buy a Thrill. I'm not sure when this one came out, but best I can tell, it was sometime in October 1972. Although it's their first album, it does have a few of their biggest songs on it. Let's listen to a couple. This is one of my favorite songs by them. The groove is so good.
In the morning,
Yes.
you go running, you go back, Jack, do it again.
That is a strong opening track to your debut album.
Yeah.
That's setting the
Ain't
bar
playing.
high. This next one, I didn't realize this was Steely Dan.
Times are hard, you're afraid to pay the fee, so I'm a fool to do your dirty work, oh yeah.
Everybody's heard
Beautiful
that song, but I had no idea it was Steely Dan.
They've got everything. I don't know a lot about Steely Dan, but they've got the singing, the
Oh yeah, and they
rhythm, the whole
impeccable
shebang.
songwriting, impeccable production, and not only that,
You.
they would often bring in session musicians of the highest quality. This next one you'll probably know as well.
Are you reeling in the years?
Makes you want to join a band. You can buy a thrill. You really can.
It was their first album. Yeah, I went through a Steely Dan phase for a while. And now we move on to another phase I went through for a while, Stevie Wonder. This came out October 27th. Talking Book. It's something like his 15th album. This is the opening track.
Mm-hmm.
Soft. This is all over Magic 103 kind of stations.
Just disappeared at many weddings.
I feel like this is the beginning for the sunshine of my life. Yeah.
Hearing it when it first came out must have been way better. Now that you've heard it, like you said, it's on weddings,
Ton.
it's in elevators, it's on Magic 103, and there's like 9,000 people have copied it. It's hard to appreciate that song as it deserves, in my opinion, at this
Unless
point.
you're a love song person.
Unless you really like soft rock, love songy
Yeah.
stuff. But I don't, but I like that song,
Sure.
especially with Stevie Wonder singing it.
This is on my yoga playlist.
Oh yeah? That clavichord's so cool.
Very superstitious. 13
to give you an idea of what a musical genius he was and is, he played all the instruments, wrote all the songs, sang all the songs. He didn't play the horns, but he arranged the horns. Last up, November 8th, 1972 is when this album came out. Transformer by Lou Reed. I don't know a lot of Lou Reed, but I know a couple of songs off of this album. He was in the Velvet Underground. He's supposedly a brilliant songwriter.
Vicious.
So you can see it's kind of punkish. His singing to me, it's sort of like Dylan in that it feels a little off, but on purpose off. This is the song everybody knows if you know anything by him.
Plucked her eyebrows on the way, shaved her legs, and then he was a she. She says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. And the colored girls go do 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 do.
Anybody with backup singers is going higher on my list.
That was a mainstay on classic rock stations.
I like this. I've never heard this. Does he fall flat?
Oh my goodness.
Some stuff? Okay. This is not me.
Most of
This
it.
is like...
That's what I was saying before. Like he sings off key, but on purpose, I think. Okay, so now we move on to the part of our program, which is just for fun. This is our gut instinct. Please tell us what you think in the comments. So number 10 for me, I'm going to put Transformer. I'm not a huge Lou Reed fan, so I certainly like those songs, but, you know, they're not high on my list. Walk on the Wild Side is a magnificent classic song, but it was so overplayed. It was everywhere. That's the reason why I don't put it higher, given these other classic albums that are on here. How about you?
My number 10 is one you can probably guess.
I'm going to say Thick as a Brick.
Yep.
That's their thing. You know, they mix in that kind of old-fashioned traditional playing.
Hanging out with the Fae.
With blues rocky stuff.
In the hollow.
Yeah. Moving on to number 9. I'm going to have to do, and this is just because of my lack of knowledge about it, Pink Moon. I'm just not familiar with Nick Drake's work. I liked what I heard so far, which is why I didn't put it last. And it's not my wheelhouse genre anyway, so I by default, I just had to put it low.
I had Deep Purple.
Okay.
I'm not into the cars and big hair and leather pants kind of scene, at least not in that way. They were a little bit too rock and roll to me, not enough other things.
Me putting this at number 8 doesn't mean I didn't like this album. Stevie Wonder, Talking Book. I really like Superstition. That's one of his greatest songs. But again, I do think his next couple albums get even better.
Pink Moon was mine. Great.
Okay.
I liked it, but I'm not sure the production value was there.
Number 7 for me is the Steely Dan album. Once again, I like Steely Dan a lot, especially Do It Again. But I do think they evolve into even better. There's a lot of great albums at the top, so got to put it at number 7. How about you?
My 7 was David Bowie.
Okay. Yeah, I
Fun
mean...
stuff. A little bit too space opera-y for me, that whole album.
Yeah, I mean, if you've never heard it before, it could sound a little old. Next, I have Deep Purple, Machine Head. I don't know this whole album, but those 3 songs that I do know on there, for them, those are 3 really amazing songs, so I gotta pay it its respect.
I had Lou Reed, and then I crossed it out and put Elton John's.
So you would have put Lou Reed here otherwise?
Yes. I liked it just fine.
Yeah.
But the fact that Elton's not on there, just it's not good enough for me.
For 5, although it's not my favorite Stones album, I'm putting Exile on Main Street just because of its place in rock annals. How about you?
One we have in common.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She likes the Rolling Stones.
They're
She hasn't
solid
heard
right in the
much of
middle.
them, but she's like what we've heard so far.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have to listen to some more for sure. Number 4 for me, Neil Young, Harvest. That is a great album, especially Old Man. That's like my favorite song of his. How about you? What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Yes.
Okay. And that's high for her. A progressive band being that high is very complimentary.
It is, but not really.
You're not into like long songs, but their songs change
Theirs
around
are
and stuff.
funky.
They move and they're fast. And
they're not trite in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Now we move on to the top 3. I can't not honor Thick as a Brick. I loved that album as a kid. I liked the concept of it's a 20-minute song, but it changes all sorts of different ways. I think that's cool. And how about you, honey? What is your number 3?
Talking Book.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I didn't think you'd put it that high. Okay.
He's funky and fun. And the fact that he's that masterful with everything seems so polished.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
It's like a gourmet meal.
Mm-hmm.
Man sings a soul.
Speaking of a gourmet meal, to me, Close to the Edge is a gourmet meal, and that's number 2. Because that has lots and lots of stuff to absorb and get into. It goes all over the place, that album.
Okay. Number 2, mine was Neil.
Harvest?
Yep.
Yeah. She likes
and I
Neil
really was tempted to put him at 1, but...
Wow. For me, number 1, I just have to give it its praises because it's a classic.
Just sanctified it.
Yes, I have to give it my blessing. I'm giving it my blessing because, everybody considers this one of the greatest albums, or most people do. So Ziggy Stardust, I have it at number 1. How about you?
Steely Dan.
Oh, Steely Dan. Okay. Yep. Wow.
They came out so strong with that. They were hitting for the fences.
Okay. That was a strong debut album, I gotta say. And I just want to say thank you to our patrons before we go.
Thanks, guys.
We couldn't do this channel without you. Your support is very generous and greatly appreciated, which is why we thank you in every video. Speaking of videos, there's extra ones over at our Patreon. You should check it out. It's actually free to join. You don't have to start out in a paid membership. There is some stuff on there that's free. So come by, check it out. Hopefully we'll see you there. And we really appreciate your comments. If you'd like to share the video or give it a thumbs up, that's helpful as well. It's appreciated, as well as subscribing. Subscribing is the best way to help a channel grow on YouTube, so we appreciate that subscription. If you'd like to leave us a tip, you could do so with PayPal or the thanks button in some of our videos.
Thanks.
Any donations of $5 or more will be recognized in our next video. So that wraps it up. If you haven't checked out our other years' best of, check them out.
Touchdown brings me round again to
We'll see you for whatever comes next.
See you guys later.
Bye.
And I think it's gonna be a long